Hi everyone, welcome. Down here in my wormery, there's an order to things, and it's a kind of loose order, but the main thing is typically that the oldest of all my systems gets to occupy this upper left section of the shelf over here. Everything that follows it in terms of being younger goes this way, and I actually have sort of a switchback pattern here. And then even down there with the yellow buckets, I have sort of a deviation. In terms of going back through time, I put that container with the yellow lid on it as an indicator of where those yellow buckets really belong sequentially. But there's always this relationship between newest and oldest, and here is what's going to be the newest of my systems now, built with a bunch of interesting materials, stuff like twine and carton style cardboard. And I actually built this brand new bin for the wormies on the same day that we had our last check-in with them, 6 days ago, in their rightful place, being the oldest of my systems. It's actually the system where we did the ping pong feeding, so we even had a diagram of that in here from last time. But the whole idea of getting today's job done is to haul out the worms that have been migrating into this edge of the bin now for quite some time now, and launch off that new system. So let's get that started. Over to the bench. Not too surprising, I've got some info to share with you about the system. It's 340 days in service now, and over here you can see that it's been 6 days ago since we last checked in here to build on that new system that I showed you earlier. And it was at that time the 29th feeding of this system went in here, and you can even see 29 is labeled right there. Lettuce, raspberry, coffee was what we fed only 6 days ago. But I figured, you know, let's get in here while the action's hot. Let's try to do the haul out right when they're coming in for all those juicy, delicious foods. And I also wanted the new system that I built for them to have a chance to sort of sit and get nice and cozy and comfortable for them by soaking. So I let all those bits of twine and cardboard sort of soak together for quite some time. 6 days, I guess, at this point. And to kind of force it, I've actually got some standing water in there. I'll show it to you when we get around to releasing these little guys into their new home. But for now, I think the focus is extraction. And, you know, I guess there is a certain point. I definitely feel good about bringing some familiar material with them to their new home. So I'm all for, you know, not being stingy on bringing some stuff along for the ride. But I also figured I would have a distinct cutoff point where the rest of it would be perhaps left to be baited out, because my plan for this was to not assume that we've got all the worms. Quite the contrary, it's pretty clear that we don't. So my idea was to try to bait the last of the stragglers that didn't come over for the most recent feeding, and that will be the worms in this material over here on the side. And as much as we tried, we didn't really succeed in getting all these little scraps of paper out of this stuff. The hope was kind of dashed hopes at this point that this stuff would be uncontaminated, no bits of bedding in it, but I was a little bit sloppy, so whatever, not the end of the world. So my big question is, are we going to be able to fit? And don't forget, I always turn to you guys as the viewers to please help me get a sense of just how many worms we're going to be starting that new system with. So I'll do my best to display the worms in all their glory. Trying my best not to obscure your view of them, but I also want to just get this haul out done pretty quickly. So as you look at each handful, most of it's worms. Here and there's bits of bedding, but we've even got some leftover food items that are coming with the worms from their old homes. And it's interesting though, pieces like these avocado pits, pieces like these pumpkin stems, or no, this is a piece of gourd actually, with a whole bunch of worms nestled inside of it. All right, let's try to get this haul out done. Like I said, it's not terribly important to feel that we've got every last worm out. Because the bait box I set up for them has got a whole bunch of nice dampened fresh bedding. It's got some nice frozen veggies that are in the process of thawing out to make the bedding even juicier than it already is. And we're definitely running out of space here in this container. I still feel like there's a handful or two of material that still needs to get extracted here. Each handful bringing with it, hard to say, but you know, a nice number of worms in each handful. And I think we're kind of running out of space here in terms of what we can take along for the ride anymore. I guess what I leave behind should be mainly finished castings. If there's anything over here that resembles bedding or food scraps, perhaps I can try to nudge it over, but you know what? It's not about nudging it over. Let's get this thing set up for baiting and we'll be done, and then we can get on to launching the new system with these little guys. This right here is my famous bait box. Just a perforated piece of plastic container, and just fortunate that I was able to find a piece that fit on there. Maybe it was the lid, I don't remember, but it fits in there perfectly, a snug little match-up. And then in here is a nice little mix of veggies, actually a sample of the stuff we're going to be putting into the new system to greet the worms when they move in, when we release them in a moment. But before we can do that, let's get the bait box for this system set up. So my only idea was to use this as an opportunity to try to aerate all the material in the system, blending it all together. It does seem to me like a good many of the worms were over in the end of the bin that we've been kind of treating as the feeding end of the wedge configuration. Originally, we just started into feeding on only one side of the system, and that does mimic a standard method of keeping a worm bin, sort of a perpetual flow, continuous flow type style setup. Some refer to as the wedge, but I did rebrand it in my record keeping shortly after christening it the wedge setup as sort of an active, in progress migration of the worms. So I just I encountered a little chunk of leftover food bit. I figured I would just pull that out and put it over there with the other material that got hauled out from the horizontal migration feeding zone, or the fed edge of the wedge, whatever you want to think of it as. But I think that's pretty much our first haul out of the primary population, recognizing that we've probably got some stragglers. I mean, you know, we can see them with our eyes. There's plenty of them in here. And traditionally, I just allow the material around the edges to air dry, to get a little bit more hostile to worm occupation. And it doesn't happen overnight, so if this starts to dry out and it starts to become material that worms probably will not want to be in, they've got plenty of time to clear out and find themselves something more cozy. But I think it's time to get the new system out here and introduce our wormies to their new home. So let's get that started next. So this environment, even though it was built 6 days ago, it was not fed. So it was simply just materials that are known to be compostable, and I've used as bedding in the past. Just some stuff that's been sort of sitting around for a really long time, and I thought it was time to put some use to it. And usually, even though I consider a brand new system as pretty much all bedding, I went ahead and I created a little bit of bedding for these little guys. It's just fresh out of my shredder. I figure let's at least put a little something down underneath this delicious pile of food. And, you know, perhaps it's a good thing that I didn't use it all up. Perhaps we can actually use that to sort of cover this up a little bit with some nice fresh shredded paper and cardboard. And yeah, that's a nice assortment. Mainly carrot and potato peel and some cucumber peel and whatever that is. Oh, looks like the piece of a pepper. Even a few pepper seeds stuck to it. So, nice assortment of yummy foods for these little guys. And you know, let's do it. Let's drop on this remaining little bit of shredded paper cardboard. It kind of covers up the foods. The foods are frozen, and well, it is what it is. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I guess if we wanted to, we could bring in some of these old pieces of paper that were previously used in the horizontal migration feeding zone as cover. So why don't we? We can use this as our feeding zone indicator. We'll put that on top at the end. We've even got our old diagram here. We got all kinds of interesting pieces of paper, but why don't we, we'll save those as bedding for future feedings for now. We'll just take this one simple piece as more of a insulating protective layer so that when we drop in our little friends, they don't get the shock of their lives landing on a bunch of frozen materials. So once again, please don't forget, let me know how many worms you think we've released into this system today. I'll be taking everyone's information, everyone's guesstimate, and combining it with my own guesstimate to come up with an averaged, estimated worm count for the system. Wow. This is going to be a nice worm launch. So let's see if we can level off this huge pile of familiar material coming with the worms. I don't want to level it off too much. I kind of like the idea of it being in a mound, just in case it takes time for the worms to get comfortable with getting acclimated into their new environment. So let's let them do just that, and then we'll pretty much be done. All right. All right, let's take some of these top cover papers, including the old ping pong diagram. We'll be able to use this stuff as nice bedding to include in a future feeding, but I think that nice shredded paper cardboard mix that we threw in here will serve really nicely as a good foundational bedding onto which we place their food. These things can even serve a sort of vapor barrier here, although, you know, a new system, I usually feel best covering up with plastic. So you know what? I've actually got some nice replacement top covers for this. And it includes a really large piece of plastic. So this piece of plastic is going to kind of stifle airflow down into the system by being as thorough as it is. So we'll probably, during the next check-in, opt to swap this huge top cover of plastic out for something different, something a little bit more breathable, perhaps something that doesn't cover as thoroughly. But with a bedding material like this that I'm certain of that it's just full of huge air gaps, I did want to protect it from drying, and I also, for that reason, kind of swamped it. So there is standing water at the bottom, probably about 2 cups worth in here. So there's only one more order of business, and I think many of you probably know what that is. Yes, you guessed it. It's the christening of our newest system. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming the newest of my worm bins. Although I've got this big fancy description on the label for them, I really just think of them as my mixed bin of red worms. And I think they're going to enjoy this interesting assortment of bedding types that we've provided for them, plus a nice pile of familiar material for them to, you know, hang out in and feel comfortable in until such a time that they're cozy enough to start exploring this interesting new home of theirs. So please don't forget to leave me a quick comment. Let me know how many worms you think we launched into here. I always really enjoy reading everyone's comments, and I look forward to reading yours as well. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.